Right, let's jump straight into this explainer. We're going to unpack what is essentially a vital survival manual for small and medium enterprises trying to navigate today's absolutely unforgiving market. Listen, if you're a business owner looking to scale, or honestly, just trying to survive the next decade, the concepts we're about to explore are absolutely crucial. We're going deep into the realities of mergers, acquisitions, and strategic alliances, drawing directly from Dr. Mike Tang's clinical manual for the SME.
So, we're going to start with a staggering question that should immediately grab the attention of any business owner wanting to expand. Why do 70 to 90% of mergers fail? I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. If a surgical procedure killed, say, 7 to 9 out of 10 patients, it would be banned entirely, right? If an aircraft failed at that rate, they'd ground the entire fleet. And yet, in the business world, this catastrophic failure rate is just accepted as reality.
Now, what's really wild is that despite that massive 70 to 90% failure rate, companies are still spending a mind-blowing $2 trillion annually on these doomed deals. $2 trillion. The money just keeps flowing, but the outcomes, they aren't changing. And look, this isn't because acquirers are stupid. It's because, quite frankly, they're diagnosing the completely wrong disease.
All right, moving into part 1, the storm facing Singapore SMEs. We really need to set the scene here to understand why this failure rate is such a life-or-death issue right now.
Consider these compounding pressures hitting you all at once. With manpower costs legislated to go up, we're talking scheduled CPF contribution hikes and employment pass thresholds bumping up to $6,000, and then you add artificial intelligence relentlessly compressing innovation cycles down to literally just 8 weeks. Well, you've likely already cut your internal costs to the absolute bone. The brutal truth? There is simply nothing left to cut that doesn't amputate a vital part of your business.
So the way out is what we call time travel. You know, exploring new capabilities organically takes years, and you simply do not have that time anymore. Building a new capability from scratch, hiring the right team, testing the market, that's way too slow. Mergers and acquisitions act as this necessary time machine, letting you inherit fully staffed, revenue-generating capabilities in just 90 days. But, and this is a massive but, M&A is definitely not some magic cure-all. Which brings us to part 2, the organ transplant metaphor. Because if you treat M&A like a magic wand, it will destroy you. We have to completely shatter the way the industry usually thinks about buying a company. Acquiring a business isn't like shopping for a shiny new machine. It's actually a highly delicate organ transplant. Under the old shopping metaphor, the transaction is the main event. You buy it, boom, you own it. But under the transplant metaphor, the transaction is merely the moment the surgeon picks up the scalpel. The host body has a very active immune system, and the true life-or-death work really begins post-closing.
Let's break this metaphor down a bit more. Before you ever enter the operating theater, you must check the blood type, right? In business, this is your strategic fit. Does this target company genuinely fill a specific articulated gap in your strategy? Or honestly, are you just adding unnecessary bulk because a competitor is expanding? Listen, if the strategic blood types are incompatible, the operation must not proceed. Period. It doesn't matter how amazing the deal looks on paper. But here's the kicker. Even with a perfect strategic blood match, an incompatible corporate culture will trigger a deadly immune response that destroys the deal from the inside out. A perfectly matched organ, implanted flawlessly by top surgeons, will still be destroyed if the host identifies it as foreign tissue. When the top engineers from the acquired company quietly stop showing up to your planning meetings, that is not office politics. That is immunology at work. And finally, you have to hook up the vascular connections, your operational systems, immediately. Your payroll, CRMs, and core operational processes have to seamlessly integrate on day one. An acquired company that's just left to carry on as before for 6 months is exactly like an organ sitting in a body with zero blood supply. It will starve. It doesn't matter how healthy it was when you bought it. Okay, moving to part 3, pre-merger versus post-merger. This clinical framework we're using exposes a massive blind spot in the industry. We're talking about a spot where almost all the money and professional attention is totally misallocated. See, the industry treats pre-merger paperwork like it's the surgery itself. Now, don't get me wrong, financial and legal due diligence are genuinely essential. They're your pre-op blood panels and consent forms. They get you the deal. But it's the unglamorous, often unbilled post-merger integration that actually gets you a functioning business. Nobody dies because a consent form was badly drafted. They die from organ rejection. Which leads perfectly into this golden rule from serial acquirers. Post-merger integration cannot,
absolutely cannot be an afterthought that happens after the closing signatures. It must begin during the due diligence stage. You have to assess those cultural and operational fits while you still have the leverage to walk away. If you wait until after you've signed the dotted line, you are effectively operating completely blind.
So let's look at part 4, the wrong surgeon problem. Because even if you do everything right up to the signing, things can still go horribly wrong.
Once the real operation begins, companies often run into a fatal resource issue. Ask yourself, would you want an untrained manager performing a complex medical transplant on you just because they happen to be available in the office? No way, right? Yet, this is exactly what most SMEs do when integrating a new acquisition. Sending your own internal staff to run an integration is basically like asking your accountant to perform open-heart surgery. They have zero experience with post-merger integrations, so what do? They default to the only tool they know, aggressive cost-cutting. And guess what happens next? The target company's absolute best talent flees in terror. You end up completely destroying the exact value you just paid a premium to acquire. You need an objective third-party integration expert to act as the surgeon, someone who might even look at the situation and decide it's the acquirer's processes that need to be cut, not the target's. Now, part 5, strategic alliances as alternatives. While bringing in that impartial expert is the right move for full acquisition, an outright purchase isn't your only path here. There's another option many SMEs completely overlook. A strategic alliance can be a brilliant, much less invasive alternative to a full transplant. Think about it. Full acquisitions are incredibly capital-intensive and super high risk. An alliance, on the other hand, allows you to co-share and co-create without betting the house. And most importantly, it's reversible. It lets you actually observe your partner's behavior under pressure before you commit irreversibly to a full-blown merger. Finally, let's get into part 6, AI tools for post-merger integration, because there's a big shift happening right now. Whether you choose an alliance or a full acquisition, the biggest hurdle for SMEs has always been the staggering cost of elite advisory services. Historically, you just couldn't afford the six-figure fees to do this right. But as this breakdown shows, the technology has fundamentally shifted. We now have a completely new cost substitution model. Traditionally, deep cultural analysis was just skipped by SMEs. Now, AI platforms handle that expensive diagnostic analysis up front. And no, this doesn't replace your human advisors. It empowers them. It turns a massive open-ended discovery phase into a tightly bounded execution project, letting you hire affordable local professionals to actually execute.
Using these AI powerhouse apps provides that critical analytical layer. Think of them as your MRI and your blood work. They use a really clever pass-the-device flow to get independent answers from both parties, actively spotting the gaps between what each side actually believes. They run full cultural compatibility profiles and behavioral stress tests. The result? You can safely diagnose integration gaps for a fraction of the traditional cost, giving your human advisors exactly what they need to know on day one.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own growth strategy and ask yourself this final, highly consequential question. Are you preparing for a complex transplant, securing the right blood match, and actively managing the immune response? Or are you just blindly shopping for organs? Because honestly, the survival of your business in this current economic storm depends entirely on which metaphor you choose to operate by.